I was already driving when I noticed the mileage was higher than it should have been, not by a lot, just enough that it caught my attention because I had filled the tank the night before and hadn't gone anywhere unusual. I stared at it longer than I needed to, then told myself I probably remembered wrong. That explanation held until I adjusted my seat and realized it was already farther back than I keep it, which made no sense because I'm the only one who drives this car and I don't lend it to anyone ever. I tried to shake it off, merged onto the highway, and my phone connected to the car audio automatically, except the podcast that started playing wasn't where I left off. It was almost 40 minutes ahead. I checked the timestamp twice and pulled over, not because I was scared yet, but because stacking small things like that messes with your head if you don't slow down. While I was sitting there, I noticed a fingerprint smudge on the inside of the rearview mirror. I know how that sounds, but I clean that mirror constantly because it annoys me when it's dirty, and this one wasn't mine. I wiped it with my sleeve, got back on the road, and drove straight home. My apartment door was locked, but when I turned the deadbolt, it moved too easily, like it had been twisted back and forth a few times. Inside, nothing looked disturbed at first. No drawers open, nothing missing. Then I saw the bathroom cabinet wasn't fully shut. I always close it because it hits the wall if it's left open, and I stood there staring at that small gap longer than I should have. That was when my phone buzzed with a notification from the car app saying a door was unlocked. I knew I had locked it by hand when I got out. I didn't rush outside. I waited, listened, then stepped into the hallway and went down slowly. The driver's door was open just enough to notice, not wide, just cracked. I didn't go straight to it. I walked around the car first, looked through the windows, and that's when I saw my house key sitting in the cup holder, not tossed there, placed. I never put it there. I keep it on a hook by the door because I've locked myself out before. I stepped back and felt that uncomfortable sense of someone being too close without hearing them. From near the stairwell, a man's voice said, "You dropped it earlier." His tone was normal, like he was returning something I forgot at a store. I turned, but the stairwell light was off, and I couldn't see his face clearly. I asked who he was, and he said, "You don't remember?" Like that was a reasonable question. My stomach tightened because there wasn't anything missing from my day. No gap, no confusion. I told him to step into the light, and he said, "It's fine," like I was making a big deal out of nothing. I backed toward my apartment door, keeping him in my peripheral vision, and he said, quieter this time, "You didn't notice the first time either." That sentence landed harder than anything else he said because it wasn't dramatic. It sounded factual. I got inside, locked everything, and called the police. They took it seriously. But when they checked the parking lot cameras later, there was a chunk of footage missing from the middle of the day, almost an hour gone, with no explanation. I sold the car the next week, moved buildings, changed locks, tried to put it behind me. A month later, my new car app sent a notification welcoming a new device, like someone nearby had tried to connect. I turned off keyless entry that same night. I don't leave things unlocked anymore, and I don't assume small changes are nothing. wish I could say that was the only time I've heard something like this. It wasn't. I was doing night inventory at a warehouse that stores medical equipment, nothing dramatic, just counting sealed crates and scanning barcodes while a radio played low. Because silence made the place feel too big. The building sits at the edge of an industrial area, and after hours, it's just trucks parked crooked and sodium lights buzzing around midnight. I noticed one pallet was pulled out farther than it should have been, not missing, just angled wrong. I fixed it and kept moving. 10 minutes later, it was angled again. I assumed I bumped it with the cart without realizing, which happens when you're tired and trying to finish on time. I kept counting and reached the back aisle where the loading doors are. One of the dock plates was down. I knew I hadn't touched it because only supervisors are supposed to lower them, and I wasn't one. I checked the log tablet, no entry. I raised it back up and told myself maybe someone from an earlier shift forgot, and it just hadn't registered. That explanation lasted until I heard the soft scrape of plastic wrap behind me. Not loud, not sudden, just the sound it makes when someone presses on it with a hand. I turned around, expecting a coworker messing around. The aisle was empty, but the wrap on a stack of boxes was dented inward like someone had leaned there and then stepped away. I called out a name. No answer. I tried another. Nothing. I stood there longer than I should have, waiting for footsteps or laughter or anything that would make it normal. Nothing came. I radioed the front desk and asked if anyone else was inside. They said no. Everyone had clocked out except me. I started heading back toward the office, moving slower now. Halfway there, I saw the motion sensor light at the far end flick on, then off. That sensor is positioned low and only triggers if someone passes close to the ground or crouches. I didn't say anything. I didn't radio again. I just kept walking and told myself if someone was stealing, they would leave once they knew I was aware. That thought didn't help when I passed a stack of crates and saw a zip tie lying cleanly on top like it had been placed there. We use zip ties for shipping, but they don't end up loose unless someone cuts them. I reached the office and locked the door. I checked the camera feeds. Most of them were fine. One aisle camera showed static, another was live, but angled slightly downward, not enough to be obvious unless you knew how it normally looked. I watched it for a while. Nothing moved. Then I saw a shoe step briefly into frame and back out, not rushing, not sneaking, just testing the edge of the view. I called security. While waiting, I heard the slow roll of a cart outside the office. The sound stopped right at the door. No knock, no handle test, just the presence of someone close enough that I could hear fabric shift when they moved their weight. I didn't speak. After a few seconds, the cart rolled away. When security arrived, they swept the place and found nothing except that 3 pallets had been repositioned and one emergency exit bar had been pressed but not opened. I went home after giving a statement and didn't sleep. 2 days later, my supervisor asked if I had been training someone overnight because the system showed badge access moving through the warehouse in a pattern that matched my usual route. Same pace, same pauses. The badge ID wasn't mine, it was unassigned. They blamed a glitch and cleared it. I didn't argue. I quit the following week. Months later, I ran into a former coworker who asked if I ever figured out who had been shadowing me. I asked what he meant. He said people on day shift kept finding things moved just enough to notice, but only on nights. I used to work, same aisles, same spots. I didn't ask anything else. I already knew it wasn't about stealing.